You're listening to the Masonic Lite podcast. Starring Pete Ruggieri, Larry Maris, and Jason Lewis. This podcast is not endorsed by any Grand Lodge, and the ridiculous ramblings of the hosts are their own. So sit back and enjoy some Masonic conversation without pretension. And now, here's your hosts, Pete, Larry, and Jason.
Hey, and we're here at Masonic Lite Podcast, episode number 35.
Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, 35.
Right, 35.
And due to our technical difficulty or our technical limitations, we have our guest this week on the phone with us already. So hi, Oscar.
Good afternoon, or good evening, I should say, depending on the East Coast. So good evening, brothers. How are you?
Very good. And what's the correct pronunciation of your last name? Is it Alleyne or Alleyne?
Alleyne.
Alleyne. Okay.
What's the correct pronunciation of your first name?
Oh, the real first is. Oh, yes, that's right. We just call him Oscar.
Okay. So what's your birth name?
Oscar. Oscar's my middle name.
Oh, okay. I was just at a
Boy,
few...
you ducked out of that one, didn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, someone said to me it's going to be a pretty tough interview, so I came ready.
Absolutely.
I was just at a funeral. My uncle is from India, and we just always knew him as KC.
Yeah.
Well, apparently there was initials, and the K is like a foot and a half long and 14 font. Yeah.
So my first name, to which you're asking the question, is El Camino, which is Spanish and means he who carries the flame or bears the torch.
Oh, I thought it was a car.
Oh,
that's El Camino.
Ah, sorry. Got it. Yeah.
So we're gonna we're gonna talk to Oscar in a minute, but he can chime in whenever he wants. We're gonna go around the room like we normally do. Jason, have you done anything Masonically? I'm asking you, Raiders. You have a full Twizzler in your mouth.
Nope, I'm good. We had a special meeting this month. We had to vote on a candidate over the summer, and it's been picnic season, so it's been a lot of Scottish Rite Club action and summer picnic for my Blue Lodge, and that's really about it.
Okay. And Jack, you had some stuff going on, and some stuff with Oscar.
I did have some stuff going on. I went up last Saturday to Westfield, New Jersey, to an AMD, Allied Masonic Degrees in-gathering. And Oscar was there, and everybody on either side of Oscar had to move over to allow room for his Masonic brain, because he's a Masonic wealth. But it was a great meeting. It's actually, I don't know if you know Oscar, but that was my father's home lodge when we lived in Westfield. So it was kind of like a homecoming that I never went to before. So that was cool.
AP is a classic.
Yeah, it was awesome. He was actually Atlas before the merger. But anyway. We had 4 speakers, and it's going to reflect a little bit on my Masonic news tonight. But in the room we had 2 Muslim speakers. No, 1 Muslim speaker, 2 Jewish speakers, and a Christian speaker, and a Taoist who stood up on the sidelines. So it was beautifully reflective of Freemasonry. I thought it was awesome.
So a Muslim, a Jew, a Christian, and Taoist walk into a lodge.
That's where that came from. Right, yes, exactly.
But Larry was nowhere to be found.
Larry was not. He was taking a nap, I think. Yeah. But
Larry,
I'm sorry. And then we had a stated meeting this month, which no one ever does. But we had a stated meeting in August, just because the officers just so wanted to be there for another stated meeting over the summer. So it was good. It was sparsely attended, but it was a good meeting. I gave a little talk on the 7 liberal arts.
Very nice. And Larry, have you done anything Masonically?
Tall Cedar is a ladies' night picnic we went to. Your wife, my wife. Nice function. Breakfast, of course, with goose and gridiron, which continuing thing. That's about it.
Yeah, I think the only thing I did Masonically was that Tall Cedars event. So pretty lame. Oh, Jason has one more. He has a big bruise on his arm.
I was shooting some guns at a picnic, and I shot them all wrong.
Yeah, the butt of the gun needs to go against the shoulder, not like your arm.
The bruise needs to be higher up.
We'll have to post a picture of that on the Facebook page.
That's why they give Masons swords and not guns.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Oscar, what did you do Masonically this last week or two?
Last week, as was mentioned, the AMD event was pretty sizable. Of course, there's the usual talking to brothers, working on different research projects or just ideas. So that pretty much was about it, and catching up with family, of course.
Always good.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and we're actually going to interview Oscar Alleyne for real.
Our guest this evening is Oscar Alleyne, an internationally respected Masonic speaker, having presented over 100 lectures covering multiple areas of interest to over thousands of Freemasons. He's been published in several widely distributed Masonic journals, research bodies, and academic conferences on Freemasonry. Now, he was raised as a Master Mason in Wallkill Lodge, number 627 in Orange Rockland District, which is in the state of New York. He served as Worshipful Master of 2014 and 2015 of Wappingers Lodge, number 671, and that's in the Dutchess District of New York. He's Commander-in-Chief of the Scottish Rite Valley of the Hudson, member of the Royal Order of Scotland, Pete, a Fellow of the Grand College of the Rights of the United States of America, an active member in the American Lodge of Research, and a Fellow of the Pennsylvania Lodge of Research. He is a member and on the board of directors of the Masonic Society. Welcome, Oscar. I could have gone on for at least a half hour with all of the things you've done, so excuse me, I did shorten it a bit to make it a little bit more palatable to our lowbrow audience. Yeah, to our lowbrow audience.
And all around good guy.
Well, welcome, my friend.
God, I realized where you got that from. You must have gotten that from the academy, because what I usually send is usually 2 sentences. Brother Oscar Alleyne from Wappingers Lodge, and likes to talk Masonically, and that's it.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. That's where I did get it from.
We're not afraid to steal material from
absolutely
anybody.
Not. No, absolutely not.
How do you think you wrote The Red Serpent?
What? Oh, come on. No, guy. You're treading on really thin ice there.
Harsh.
Gosh. Well, anyway, you and I met for the very first time in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, when you presented a lecture on clandestine Freemasonry. You began that research from a personal experience. You want to tell us about that?
Personal experience. So what folks don't always catch was that I spent 14 years of my life from age 21 as a member of a clandestine Masonic order. And as much as a researcher I was back then, and my level of activity, going through the chairs, etc., nothing had ever came to fruition or to light to say, hey, this group was not necessarily a recognized entity. And it was only when I was in graduate school in Albany, New York, and traveling 2 hours multiple times a week back to New York City to attend lodge meetings and pen and body meetings that a brother said to me, hey, you're Mason, you can travel anywhere. Why don't you check out one of the lodges in Albany? So I got dressed and I went to, with all my, all my regalia, everything else, to go visit a lodge in Albany. And I knocked on the door, and the brothers looked outside and said, where'd you come from? And I gave them the name of the unrecognized group, and the door slammed in my face, never to reopen again. At which point I figured out something's wrong. And subsequently, I spent, I would say, about 2 or so years in what I call Masonic purgatory, because I recognized that I wasn't in a legitimate after I went and I did more research and I looked into the own organization's constitutions. And on the first page of their history, it clearly says that they were created under the auspices of a gentleman by the name of John G. Jones, who is now known or has been known as the father of bogus Masonry. So in any extent, I just didn't know how to become regular or what to do. And a friend of mine who has, he passed over the last few years, but he actually cornered me and said, I got something to tell you. And I'm like, what? He said, well, the stuff you're in is not necessarily correct. And I said, well, I knew that. I just don't know how to correct it. Then he gave me good information. And subsequently, I walked into Wallkill in 2008 and confused the heck out of them because I had all this stuff and I knew what I needed to do. And they've never seen that before. So I basically had to wait for them to contact Grand Lodge, who gave them the guidance as to what's necessary for men like me who choose to leave their clandestine groups and join regular Masonry. And I filled out necessary forms, I signed the attestations, and I submitted a petition. And the rest is history. I was reinitiated in some way, shape, or form in 2009 into the Grand Lodge State of New York, and I never looked back since. In fact, the Secretary of the Lodge, who was a Mason for 37 years, said to me, I'm the only person he's ever met who wanted to be a Mason so bad and was already a Mason. So,
Oscar, we had a similar experience in my lodge. Did you have to take the degrees, or were you simply sort of examined and passed through?
Now, the Grand Lodge State of New York's rules are quite distinct in the sense because you're in a recognized body, they can't recognize degrees you took. So I essentially redid the degrees as a profane. Mm-hmm. But prior to doing that, I needed to sign a renunciation form, renouncing my membership in this group under the signature of the worship master as well as the two wardens. And then the secretary would send that to the Grand Lodge to get a clearance letter, and that clearance letter goes in your file with your petition, and you go through the steps as if you were a profane. So when I came through my degrees in 2009, I essentially, after 14 years of being in this other group, essentially was like the returning student, whereas everyone else, the other 6 members of my class were bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and I had to do everything possible not to ruin it for them because I knew what was coming next.
How similar or dissimilar was your clandestine lodge versus your lodges now?
So that's a difficult question for brothers from Pennsylvania. As you know, your degrees are much different than most of the rest of the United States. And in actuality, the difference in the ritual was more so from certain gestures and just the way key signs are done, in addition to the context of the language. So they use actually is readily available, a ritual called Lester's Look to the East, which is an old ritual that has been around that follows the Webb and the Preston style of work that we practice here in the U.S., with the exception of Pennsylvania and South Carolina. But nonetheless, it was no different than for me saying the difference between California ritual and Michigan ritual versus New York ritual. They're always going to be, or even as we've seen in New York City, you could have different ritual versus guys that are upstate. So it was very similar, but there are some minor variances here and there.
So there was no red flags over that decade and a half until you started to try to travel.
Correct.
Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah. Oscar, one of the things that fascinated me the most was that particular presentation, Clandestine Freemasonry, that you give. And I'm going to read you what Chris Hodap said in his blog about this. And I feel very strongly about it myself. He was imploring people to come out to one of the presentations that we were going to give. And he said, and I'm quoting, "Cast a wide net and make special attempts to encourage attendees. It can open their eyes, as Oscar's own eyes were opened. Moreover, consider the very important demographics he represents. He is young, African-American, extremely educated, a doctor in epidemiology in New York, and well-traveled. He was once a member of a clandestine Masonic Lodge himself and is now extremely active and respected in the Grand Lodge of New York. How do you feel when you realized how powerful an impact your thesis made on Freemasons everywhere?
Well, I will first say that I'm obviously humbled by that description, but I would honestly say that my story is no different than the hundreds and in some cases thousands of other men who have not only gone this way before me, but have additionally still experiencing these kinds of, I guess, unfortunate situations. So here's the what really happened with me. I became a regular Mason. Of course, my lodge had never seen or figured, or they just didn't have an understanding about that. So I would get guys saying to me, "Oh, well, why did you have to do the degrees over? You're Prince Hall." I said, "No, I wasn't Prince Hall. But yeah, you must be Prince Hall because, and we recognize Prince Hall, so we don't understand why did they do that." And it took me a while to try to explain to folks that there's a difference between the Prince Hall groups and the other groups. Because they were being painted with the same brush or broad stroke. So what I came up with, as usual, based on my upbringing and always trying to at least turn things into an education tool, I said, well, maybe I need to present something to the brothers of my lodge to explain to them, since a lot of them were confused and didn't really understand what was going on or why I had to go through the degrees all over. So I developed that paper as well as the presentation. But what I did was the usual Oscar fashion. I take things a step further. So I did additional research with brothers who I know in the Prince Hall and some great historians under Prince Hall that I personally had sought out, like Brother Ralph McNeil and Brother Ezekiel Bay out of New York, Ralph being out in Jersey, but now over in Arizona. And I had essentially shown them the work that I had compiled, in addition to showing the different complexities across the quote unquote, the unrecognized world, and really trying to paint a picture. So anyone who sees or hears the presentation will not be confused as to the differences that exist and why those differences are important to know. And more importantly, to your latter point, and what Chris was trying to establish, is the value of awareness and how being aware makes us better Masons, and also the need for our community. So it's not just within the fraternity alone, but anyone within the community to know the differences between these groups, so that if there are individuals looking to become Freemasons, they can be at least pointed in the direction of regular Freemasonry, so they have that first choice of refusal, for lack of a better word, instead of being like me and others who unfortunately go to the first thing that says square and compasses and not knowing the extent of regularity and the importance thereof.
So when you came in, you totally hit the ground running, because you're in, things most people have never heard of. So what was it like? Were your eyes wide open, kind of like in the statement we can't say, but in the first degree? Because there's so many things available in Freemasonry that weren't available in the clandestine world.
That is absolutely true. And you guys are actually, I think, for the first time on the podcast, other than personal communication, are probably going to hear the reason why I do what I do so vociferously. The one thing that was denied of me by virtue of my membership for those 14 years was that ability to travel. Now, yes, they had smaller lodges. If they met amongst each other. They had little districts. Not a lot of guys or a lot of masonry, but it was constricted to those that insular universe. But when I joined regular Freemasonry, the one thing that I was denied for those 14 years was that ability to travel, and I made it my goal to exercise that opportunity and experience Freemasonry across the world as much and as best as I could. So the benefits of meeting brothers, and I will tell you, a lot of my interaction, as you said, I hit the ground running in 2009, 2010, I was already in Scottish Rite, and I was traveling I think I saw all of the Northern Masonic Scottish Rite degrees in under 1 year. And that was a goal that we have to our small valley. And we accomplished that by traveling all over the Northern Masonic jurisdiction. and quite extensively within Pennsylvania. In fact, the Pennsylvania brothers did treat us well, and I think I've become quote unquote notorious for showing up at reunions because they're those New York guys, and we were able to complete those degrees in a very short fashion. But the fact of the matter is, by meeting all those brothers, you started to get that sense of camaraderie, that spirit, that interaction across states, across jurisdictions, across lodges, that people had a genuine interest to learn more about you and to experience that brotherhood. So that's what did it for me.
That worldwide brotherhood that's missing when you're a neighborhood clandestine body.
Yeah. And I would say the same thing even for those brothers in regular lodges who don't avail themselves of the opportunity to travel. Absolutely. For whatever reason. I mean, people have reasons, but I would say a lot of folks take it for granted.
Yeah, there's even, I would say most Masons, maybe even most Masons in this room aren't aware of there's a King Solomon's Lodge, I forget what all the letters after it are, in Lancaster County.
Yep.
A friend of mine was a past district deputy. And I didn't realize, because he knew when I was going through the degrees, and, we shook hands as brothers. And once I got in, I realized, well, you're still my friend, you're still my brother, but just, I can't visit you and you can't visit me.
Correct. And I think that's going to the awareness factor in the paper I wrote in the presentations, which takes it a step further, which, as I said, I always take things, a little beyond what most folks will stop at. What I was asked in many of these interactions was, well, what can we do? And what should be done? It's one thing to just say, well, this is the skinny of it. And what basically I came in recommendations, and I attempted this. I put a proposal into my Grand Lodge, and I'm trying to be very careful what I say. So I get a proposal into Grand Lodge about how to address this issue around clandestine Freemasonry, mainly because New York has the honor of having the largest number of clandestine bodies in any other state in the U.S., followed secondarily by Illinois, then by California and Texas. So in New York, where I'm from, brothers were asking, what can we do? How can we do something? And I devised a simple program called Reclamation of Regularity. And I submitted it as a proposal to the Grand Lodge. It got to a couple past Grand Masters and a Grand Master, et cetera. And then, there was an interest, and what was asked was, well, they didn't want to work on it or move on it until they were assured that the Prince Hall Grand Lodge was in agreement and would have been an equal partner. So they said, well, you have to get them on board. So I got them on board. I made attempts to get them on board, but then I got slapped on the wrist because I did what I was asked to do, and was told that I basically stepped out of bounds with respect to jurisdictional communication, mainly because one of the Prince Hall folks had wrote an email stating that, hey, Brother Oscar's my point of contact on this initiative, and that ruffled some higher-ups' feathers. So the proposal got shut down, and I was told to, wait and put it to the side. What I decided to do was to put it into my paper and have it disseminated, equally to anyone who had a desire. What are you guys laughing at?
We call that a workaround. Yeah, we're all about ruffling feathers here at Masonic Lite. Yeah.
So I put it out there, and so the whole point is the reclamation of regularity was 3 simple steps. Awareness. What do you know about each other? If you're 2 regular jurisdictions that share amity, visit each other, see what each other's dues cards are like, interact, go to each other's function, exercise what's your due right in some regard. Also, educate the clandestine Mason. There are many of guys who are like me, who, and to Chris's Hodap's point, who don't know, and they're thinking of joining regular jurisdictions. So if you have something simply, even on your websites, to say, these are the benefits of regularity, click here, are you a clandestine Mason? Would you like to become regular? And if you meet the requirements, here's what you need to do. That's something low cost. No one's feelings will get hurt. And thirdly, educate the community.
You could make it like a gun amnesty program. Like if you want to come in, we'll just make it easier for you.
Just leave your dues card on the table and walk away.
I will say, Oscar, at the Jim Thorpe meeting, I think it was about 3 years ago exactly, the presentation was phenomenal. It was great. But you were also given an honor that day. You were actually made that day a fellow of the Pennsylvania Lodge of Research. And let me tell you, they rarely give fellowships out. So, but I'll tell you what, it was an awesome choice. You did great, really. And I was glad I was there to see that.
Yeah, thank you. And I still have my beautiful orange apron that I love, especially being a member of the...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
You're a fella. Larry's just a dude.
No, I'm a presenter. I have an orange and blue apron myself. We're going to take a break. We're going to take a break right now.
Larry's
when we come back, our guest, Oscar Alleyne, is still going to be with us.
All right.
So we'll be right back.
Is it a fair statement to say that the majority of the clandestine lodges are spinoffs of Prince Hall? Do you see that more on the Prince Hall side?
It is not the correct thing to say for a number of reasons. When you say spinoff, that means that they were originally legitimate members or legitimate lodges of Prince Hall. And in fact, many of these groups are just created out of thin air. It's quite easy to actually form a clandestine Grand Lodge. Larry and you can go down to the Secretary of State, pay $300, and form the Larry and Oscar Grand Lodge, Agent Free and Accepted Incorporated.
That could solve a lot of problems.
Then you essentially go to McCoy's. You buy.
I can retire.
Get a boatload of regalia, and now you start your pyramid scheme. So it's very easy to do.
Nice.
It happens. But what people unfortunately confuse, because it tends to be that more visibly the African American unrecognized groups are in those communities, and people automatically think that they're Prince Hall or spinoff of Prince Hall. They're not. As I just illustrated, there were a few guys early on in 1900s who were expelled Masons that became, that went and formed, like John G. Jones, but they're not spinoffs of Prince Hall. I mean, I think that causes some confusion. There's another group which is called Prince Hall Origin, that the best way I can say it, they're genetic cousins of the Prince Hall affiliate that we recognize, but because they have an irregular structure of a national grand body and national grand lodge over their state grand lodges, they are not going to be deemed as being regular in practice. So they would never be recognized either.
Oscar, this is Pete. The first time I ever met you, I was down at Masonic Week for the first time, and this was, I guess, 2 or 3 years ago. And,
yes, sir.
And to us here in Pennsylvania, at least in Lancaster County, we didn't have AMD before. So that was kind of like brand new to us. So I was just hoping you could give our audience, because there's a lot of Masons that have no idea what that is. If you could kind of give an explanation what AMD is.
You guys are supposed to give me like the questions that I can just be short in my responses to, right?
When does that start?
See, you can talk and we can eat. That's the
For the record, absolutely no one on the committee has offered me any twizzlers, but that's okay. So the Allied Masonic Degrees are an interesting development, as I say, in the Masonic world, because they are a set of degrees that are regular in practice outside of the U.S., but within the U.S., they don't fall within the normal structure that we know of, meaning you're in Scottish Rite, you're in York Rite, you're in the Craft Lodge, et cetera. So, for example, in England, you have things like the Royal Ark Mariner, which is a total separate degree system. The Mark Master, the Mark Lodge, in addition to the other craft lodges. The other York Rite bodies, such as Royal Arch, et cetera. Now, while the Royal Ark Mariner exists in these other countries under their normal structure, in the U.S., it's unaffiliated. So early, I would say, in whatever point in time, the these degrees were accumulated under a sovereign college of Allied Masonic Degrees, which then essentially became the Grand Council of Allied Masonic Degrees of the United States of America. And there are upwards of 20 plus degrees that are regular and provide for a greater context and understanding about Freemasonry, but they're not, they don't fit our regular American-based system.
Is that because for the most part in Europe there is no York Rite? That some of these degrees over there.
Well, the York Rite exists in Europe, especially in those jurisdictions where the General Grand Council of Royal Arch in New York, the General Crack, those groups where they actually help form York Rite bodies. But for the most part, if you're from England, Scotland, or Ireland, you have what we would call Royal Arch and the Royal Select. They don't call it the York Rite as we do, because the term is really the American York Rite in comparison to the rest of the world. So these degrees are housed in this Grand Council, and that Grand Council is derived for two purposes. One, the maintenance and the security of these degrees, and also for the advancement of Masonic research and education. And the way you can access the degree system or this entire Allied Masonic system is by virtue of being invited into it. So it's not something you can just pop down a petition and say, hey, I want to join. It's more so by having an interest in research, education, writing, papers, et cetera, that you may be invited to become a member of a council of Allied Masonic Degrees. And once you have membership in that, you have access to all of these degrees to learn, study, practice within the context of the council. Now, last section to that point, I should say, is the Allied Masonic Degrees, because they're invitational, requires you to be a Royal Arch member. So as long as you're a member of a legitimate Royal Arch chapter, you meet the base requirements of eligibility to be invited into the AMD.
Very cool.
Are we back from break yet?
Yeah, we've been back from break.
Yeah.
Have we really?
We just pretended.
Good morning, Larry.
I made the hand signal just to roll with it.
And Oscar, I may be seeing you I'll be seeing you on Saturday, if you'll be in DC.
Saturday, yeah. What's going on Saturday? Let's see. Saturday,
Royal Order of Scotland.
Royal Order and Scottish Rite.
Yep. So I'll be down there. Somebody lost their paperwork and got me invited to the Royal Order of Scotland. So I'm really looking forward.
I just found out. I'm like, wait, I think I should go visit that. So I got to call the Secretary's office on tomorrow to make sure I get a ticket someplace.
You're supposed to invest Pete with his cod piece, I think. Isn't that right?
I don't know the degree yet. Don't ruin it.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Larry. I'll turn this back over to you again.
Oh, geez, I lost control a long time ago.
Yeah.
This past March, you were invited to the Pennsylvania Academy of Masonic Knowledge.
Yes, sir.
Your topic was on French companionship or French companions. And I thought to myself, wow, this topic may not go over too good in a Masonic gathering, because I had a French companion when I lived in Morocco. And,
that was a French courtesan. It's a little different.
Jeez. Anyway, but give us a little bit of insight into the companion fraternity that you did a lot of research on.
I'm still laughing at the fact that, the French companion, I remember that interview you did in the back of the academy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I didn't forget that one. That's because I kept thinking about her. Thank you very much.
Now I'm connecting the dots. It's because you had a French companion. Okay, I got it. It's a little flashback for you, right, Larry?
Yes, it is.
So the concept of French companionship and the history behind it, it's essentially a guild that existed in France, and some would argue that existed there before Freemasonry made it into France. And specifically, the presentation and the research that I provide on French companionship is to illustrate the history of that, plus one key component. They use the square and compasses as their logo as well, which was important because this started on this conversation I've had with brothers. Well, the square and compasses or belong to Masons, and having to tell them no, it doesn't. And there are other groups who are organizationally kind of brotherhood, et cetera, who use the square and compasses, and as a result, we don't technically own them. And one such group was is the French Companionship Group, and their guilds existed in the 15th century. They have records going way back to that point, where they even sued other people in court to get their monies. And essentially, the point is that you learned your trade. Your trade could be a carpenter, tailor, tanner, a whole bunch of essentially what we would call blue-collar work trades. And part of that system of learning, going through a ritual, in addition to learning a trade and producing a product, your mastership product, you have to go on a journey called the Tour de France. And that journey, not like the Lance Armstrong with a bicycle, you get a walking stick and you travel across the country looking to basically provide and seek work and to practice your trade. And once you're done, you come back and you do your master's product, and you essentially become a full member of the companion. And the other unique component of companionship was that they also had a Abrahamic legend of an architect and the word that was lost, which had some great, I guess, similarities to what we see in Freemasonry.
Do they test for performance-enhancing drugs like the Tour de France?
No, but they do have nice sashes.
Oh, very, very cool.
You went out, actually, the extent of your research, when you get involved in research projects, you really put your body and soul into things. And you went over to France and spent some time over there following up and doing some additional research over there. How did you like going over there?
It was fantastic. The first time I went to France, I was to present the paper that I did at the Pennsylvania Lodge of Research about clandestine masonry, which was very important because France in of itself, and Americans have a misunderstanding when they say, well, the French is all full of irregular Masons. And of course, there's a time period of the Grand Lodge Nationale of France where they went out of favor. But I got to see in this academic perspective a different side and a different understanding as to how the French look at Freemasonry. And a lot of that is based on their cultural history with respect to the church and the position that religion has a role to govern one's day-to-day activities, in addition to just the whole concept of being politically engaged in that way, shape, or form. And seeing that France has such a rich Masonic history, go to the old museums and seeing many of the original documents that led into some of our great Masonic, I would say, orders, et cetera, was quite unique. And just being in France is, in that way, shape, or form, I think, was an experience in itself. But they were very welcoming. And if you think people confuse Prince Hall Masons, you can imagine what I was being confused as, oh, you're Prince Hall. It's like, no, I'm not. And having folks being very disappointed because they wanted to meet a Prince Hall Mason. So I had to tell them, of course, being that I am an honorary member of the Delphi Union 14 in the Grand Lodge of Prince Hall Grand Lodge of New York. I said, well, I am an honorary member, so I guess that brightens their spirit in some way, shape. And another time I went was to present on a book that I helped edit with John Hairston in Toulouse, in South France. I recently presented the work there of Clandestine Lodge number 1, the first lodge that was founded by Prince Hall.
Cool.
Wow, so interesting.
Very, very. I'm going to change the subject a little bit. We have
crock pots, meatloaf.
We have
pancake
an ongoing thing here with Brother Jason Lewis, our host and our producer of the show. And actually, Jason performs miracles every time we do a show like this. And when I was with you at the Academy meeting in March, I had my picture taken with you, if you recall.
Yeah.
Immediately sent it to Jason. Jack was with you, a week ago? 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
He had his picture taken with you, of course, and immediately sent it to Jason.
Oh, yeah.
We're doing that because Jason said he'd give his right arm to have his picture taken with you. So we have a
Man.
Jason has a bromance going on with you, and I just thought I'd make you aware of that.
Thanks for telling me. I'm just a regular guy. I'm just
Oh man, I'm into those clandestine guys.
Oh Lordy!
Well, I'll tell you. Well, I mean, I should expound on this. So, these guys think that you and I haven't met, and not that I would expect you to remember this, but when I joined the Scottish Rite a couple of years ago, up here, a lot of us are members of the Valley of Lancaster, which is we only have the Lodge of Perfection here. So most of us belong to the Valley of Harrisburg as well,
Or Reading.
Yep.
or Reading. So, but everybody in this room we're all Lancaster, Harrisburg in this room, except for Larry because he
Except for Jack.
So
Yeah, so just
so
you
two of
and
you.
I.
oh, are you Reading as well?
I'm Reading.
All right. Doesn't matter. Long story short, I joined with a handful of Lodge 43 friends, and it turned out that we all went to the Lodge of Perfection reunion, but I couldn't go to the Harrisburg reunion, and I didn't want to be left out and not be able to talk about Scottish Rite Masonry and have to wait another 6 months. So I went and had a courtesy conferral of the 32nd degree in the Valley of Wilmington, where you were you did the 19th degree. So I was in that class, and I was blown. A, it was the first time that I had really traveled outside of the jurisdiction of Pennsylvania, and B, I was blown away by the degree, and C, you were very kind, stuck around and talked to everybody, and we chatted briefly, and then just a few days or weeks later, you popped up on the People You May Know on Facebook, and I was like, oh, it's that guy. So ever since I've stalked you on Facebook, so there it is.
Well, I think you have one up on the guys. You've actually seen me confer ritual.
Ah, there you go.
Oh, I know. I think I did too. Were you? Were you in?
Let him get a slice of pie.
No, I can't. Did you?
I'm gonna have a Twizzler.
Were you part of the? You were part of the conferral team on the Knights of the Order of the Scarlet Cord, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And yes.
Okay, yeah. So. So sorry, Jason. We took that away.
What I didn't bring up was the
Give him
fact
a
that
win.
you are a ritual champion. You're one of the best ritualists in New York and probably the East for that matter. And then you won actually competitions.
I won a competition. I tied for first, but I got the second prize on the second. But it's I love ritual, so I won't call myself the best by any way, shape, or form. They're far better ritualists than me. But I love the ritual.
Very cool.
Now, I think it's fair to say, though, the 19th degree is the cowboy degree. So there's depending on what jurisdiction that you're in, there might be two people on stage, but the other guy, was there actually somebody on stage with you, or was he off stage with a microphone?
No, there was. I usually say it's a 2.5 degree. The first being, this is the Northern Masonic jurisdiction, edit of the 19th degree, Brothers of the Trail. And there's one guy who is provides the opening monologue. And then there's a guy who is ill, dying on stage. And then the rest of the degrees, essentially the monologues that's provided by myself to the entire audience as the part of the cast.
Right. And it's a good hour long. It's a long degree.
Wow.
Yeah, it's you never look at the time when you're actually conferring it, but it's interesting.
I'm panicking. I have 30 lines to learn for the 8th degree, and I'm freaking out.
Oscar, tell us something about you that most people don't know.
That's difficult, seeing I'm such a public guy, right? Let's see. Well, I can't say what I do for a living. Most people know that. Well, here you go. You got a good question. So most people don't know that I was born in the island of Grenada, and I grew up on the island of Barbados before moving to Brooklyn with my family, immigrating in 1989.
And how did you avoid both a Caribbean and a Brooklyn accent?
There's little pieces of it in there. You can hear.
I did that on purpose to see if you'll catch me. I did that on purpose to see. So, well, I would say early on, I learned to, one of the gifts, if I could call it that, is that I always like to speak to people on their level, not meaning high or low, but just being a people person and learning to communicate in a way that at least makes folk, comfortable, et cetera. So I can throw on different accents in probably a matter of seconds, but I tend to mask certain accents for the benefit of ease of understanding.
Very neat.
But I don't have my Lancaster accent anymore.
How did you do when you were in France with that?
Oh,
How'd you master the accent with France?
Je parle français, j'ai tout le long des collèges depuis 400 ans.
Oh, but of course.
I quit.
All right. Now we're showing off.
Okay.
Now we're just showing off. That's all.
Los cucarachas entran, pero no pueden salir. The cockroaches go in, but they don't come out. That's all I know in Spanish. Oh. Do you have any questions for us, Oscar? You can interview us.
How have we not been expelled yet? Yeah. What?
Well, what has been, I would say, one of your defining moments with respect to the podcast is, guests that you just find to be one of your highlights. I'm not asking who, just in general, from your perspective.
I was excited that they let me come back. That's all.
Yeah, I think what our charm is that we actually act like four guys sitting around a table having a conversation. We're not trying to out Mason each other. But
Say the word.
apron sniffing? Is that what you? Yeah. So no, and I think even when we have crazy intelligent guests like yourself, we're able to hopefully to you come across as a real person. You don't come across just as this big brain. You come across as a big brain with it's a good personality as well. So I think that's what we like.
Thank you for that. And if I could ask another question.
Absolutely.
Oh, jeez.
So one of the things, especially traveling across, the U.S. and across the country, speaking of Masonry, there's always this concern that brothers have about how do I get access to information? How do I get access to why I joined Freemasonry? And as you know, we still exist in an environment where sometimes you're told to sit in a corner, you young whippersnappers or you whippersnappers in general, and there's a divide. I'm basically talking about the divide between either generation or philosophical. How do you think, or where is your role as far as Masonic Lite podcasts in helping reach those brothers out there who are looking for something? And what do you view your responsibility in that regard?
Go ahead, Jack. I think you said it once before on the air.
What?
How there's a lot of guys looking for something in Freemasonry that they've never gotten.
Right. Well, yes, that's true, but I'm not sure we give it to them here.
Yeah.
I think
go ahead.
I think maybe part of the answer to that, and and you guys chime in, is the fact that I take a look at the makeup of the four guys here. And we're talking about age. I'm the oldest dude here. I'm 73. I'm looking at my counterpart, Pete. He's in his 48. I'm looking at Jack across here. He's
57.
And here's Jason, who's 26. 39. So you would think that the age disparity, I'm one of those older old guys that sits in the back of the row at a lodge meeting. But basically I'm not. And I think the fact that we blend together really well gets a point across that it doesn't matter how old you are, who you are, or where you're from. Freemasonry is about blending and working together to arrive at goals, to arrive at more knowledge. And I'm hope that this show can convey this to a point. We try to do it as humorously or as possible, but not make not demean the craft in any way. You know what I'm saying.
Jason won't let me play in the new Blue Lounge when he starts it, though, because I'm too old.
We can start the Blue Lounge. You know, I think that I'm a big proponent of podcasts, especially the Masonic ones, that, you know, when I talk to new candidates and do lodge education, I talk about how, in my personal opinion, our lodges and our appendant bodies have, you know, an element of esoterics and ritual, an element of charity, and an element of fellowship, and they all kind of weigh differently between those three items. You know, AMD, which I'm not a member of, but, you know, to me it appears that it's very esoteric, and, you know, Tall Cedars is very heavy on the charity and heavy on the fellowship. And I think that, you know, I've said it a number of times, and it's probably going to be my mantra in Masonry for a long time, is that variety is good. So I don't think that Masonic Lite necessarily has a specific responsibility. I think that we all do as Masonic podcasters. And, you know, the one thing that that we do that the public doesn't see is that all of us are connected on a private Facebook group where we can share ideas and brag about shows, or, you know, we've met all these guys virtually, but I think that, you know, podcasting delivers Masonry to people, just like Virtual Lodge. You know, I think Virtual Lodge is kind of the other component of what we do here for podcasting. So if we can offer a variety and deliver, you know, Masonry via podcast or whatever method, you know, we might be more on the fellowship side, and, you know, guys like the Masonic Roundtable or Brought to Light, you know, might be more on the esoteric side, or a mix in between. So I think our responsibility is just to continue to put, you know, this brand of Freemasonry out there, and support our other fellow brothers in their Masonic podcasting endeavors.
I think to pull it all together, each of us is called to do his own thing within the craft to share the light, right? We're all called to that. We're all supposed to share the light with our brothers. So we have to examine ourselves and identify what that is in us. What's our thing? What can we do to share the light? And what we four do is we just get together and goof around for an hour and record a podcast, and hopefully there's some insights that people can share. Jason has the talent to pull it all together. Pete has the really
I have the equipment,
dark sense of humor that keeps us all grounded. Larry has an outline that we work off of, and I've got a little bit of knowledge about ritual stuff that I throw in once in a while.
And here we are a year later with 20,000 downloads.
That's amazing. It's just phenomenal.
Now, that was once in Croatia, but, you know, hey.
And they executed that guy.
I'll
so
take
that's
the one.
You asked earlier, Oscar, what was a defining moment in the life of this podcast, and I would have to say the first show Pete and I did together. We did this, I think, kind of on a lark. He was doing another show that he put together, and came up with an idea one day and said, "Hey, let's try this out." We had no idea what we were doing.
right? I was involved in a very extremely well-produced comedy show, and we did, I don't know how many episodes, and we had like 9 listeners, and we had it was hilarious. It was really good. And then, you know, Larry and I put this half-assed thing together, and we had 500 listeners like in a week.
Yeah,
like,
and it just grew from there. So I think the defining moment was the first one. We had no idea what this would grow into. Zero.
Well, I thank you for that, because there are a few times where I tie in what I do professionally with the Masonic realm. And today I attended this conference around communication. It's mostly health communication, but the science of communication. And there are 4 things that was discussed today, and I'm going to introduce them just for the sake of what you guys just mentioned. One is about improving the experience and the quality of life. The other is advancing the effectiveness of communication and promoting positive behavior or positive experiences, and also that in healthcare, reducing the risk. Now, if I use that in the construct of your podcast, and while I wasn't trying to say that you have this responsibility, you do have a audience. And one of the things that I think is important to reflect on is the fact that you are providing a service to those who oftentimes feel that there's no one else out there. And the unique thing that I see today, and as I said, when I listened to the Larry episode, of the academy, and I emailed you guys or messaged you guys right away to say, all right, look, I got to get on this and reach out to you all, is because similarly, you don't lose that fabric of being people, of being regular brothers. And that's important for one reason. We fall victim to the ego in Freemasonry too much.
No way. Does that ever happen? No.
I'm not talking the little ego, the real.
I always thought that was part of a meeting.
That's what you keep under the hat.
Benevolent branch of ego. And it's difficult because sometimes you don't see it, but I think having that balance and having friends that can keep you honest. I mean, I have brothers message me and it's like, hey, Oscar, if you ever think about becoming like holier than thou, you know, we're gonna like have to drag you down. And I said, I hope you would if you were my friend. You don't want to be the guy that quote unquote feels he's bigger than his britches and then all of a sudden, turn on folks because of the ego. So that's my observation. So it's not even a caution. And that's why I asked the question, because sometimes we don't say it and it may be helpful for others who are listening to understand that when all's said and done, we're in a volunteer organization that we choose to pay money to be a member of.
Right.
Sometimes people think of it as being as if they're the heads of countries. The reality is we're heads of our own in our own minds, but we never should lose sight of, yes, there's a greater goal to Freemasonry, but keep ourselves in that due bounds because we can be our own worst enemies.
See, and as an epidemiologist, I was sure that you were going to say that we were a virus. So I don't know. It's just...
I was thinking more like a plague.
Plague.
There is some aspects of the antimicrobial resistance, but luckily.
See, I was thinking more of a symbiotic kind of like parasite to the host. Freemasonry is the host, and we're the parasite, but we need each other.
That's a very good.
I like that.
Go with that. I can go with parasitic.
Hey, I have to ask.
We have ointments for that.
Nice.
Pete's got enough ointments there.
I have to ask you, Oscar. This is a personal question, but we can answer it on the air. Why doesn't Chris Hodap talk to me?
I have no idea, Larry. This is the first time I know that he doesn't talk to me.
He doesn't talk to me. He won't answer my calls. He won't. I'm heartbroken.
Poor Larry.
Sounds like he's smart.
Larry, that could be because in Indiana they're stalking laws.
All right. Well, anyway.
Well, there's parts of Indiana where you have to walk to the end of the driveway to get on the phone. So maybe he's in one of those Amish neighborhoods.
That's on the other side of Ohio, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I think it's just Larry.
I think we need to take a break.
All right, we'll take a quick break and we'll wrap up when we come back.
Well, we got to listen to. Should we listen to Seth on our break?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, maybe you'll hear
Sounds
Seth.
so excited.
All right.
More Seth.
Okay, go ahead.
All Seth all the time.
You're about to enter
Corpora Obscurum.
the realm of weird fraternal organizations.
Leave your Freemasonry behind.
Prepare to meet druids, caliphs, and wild creatures.
Knock thrice.
And enter at your own risk. Good day again there, Masonic Lite podcast listener. Today on Corpora Obscurum, we're going to take a deep cut into Prince Hall Freemasonry with the Order of Sirenes. The Order of Sirenes, attached to the Prince Hall Knights Templar, is unique to Prince Hall Freemasonry. It started in Pennsylvania in 1884, consisting of wives, widows, mothers, and daughters of Master Masons. They originally wanted to benefit humanity, taking on Simon of Cyrene, the biblical character, as their example. The first court was St. James Royal Court No. 1, located in southeastern Pennsylvania. In 1904, the United Grand Commandery of Pennsylvania, Prince Hall affiliated, officially adopted the Order of Sirenes as their Ladies' Auxiliary. In 1919, the group spread to Washington, D.C., and to New Jersey in 1926. Local groups are led by a Royal Commandress, a woman, and a Chief Engineer, a Master Mason. The group is still active today, operating mainly in the northeastern United States, but there are other courts and grand courts around the country. Want to learn more about America's fraternal history? Visit the J.H. Rathbone Museum in person in Lafayette, Indiana, or online at www.jhrathbonemuseum.org.
Hey, we just heard Seth Anthony's Corpora Obscurum.
Very interesting.
Very interesting. We have no idea what clip we played, but we're sure it was very interesting.
It's gonna be
It was great.
awesome.
Yep. He just gave us a whole new batch of recordings, so we're good to go.
Oh, very cool.
Obscurums.
Of Obscurums, yeah.
And so we have a Masonic news, Jack.
Yes, there is Masonic news.
Oh, well, let's see if we can find the guy.
Good news, everyone!
Masonic Lite News. News not fit to print.
According to the Rocky Mountain Mason Facebook page, in a show of Masonic unity and brotherhood, Lodge Shalom number 1600, a predominantly Jewish lodge in the city of Glasgow, under the jurisdiction of the Grand Lodge of Scotland, installed Brother Wali Khan, a Pakistani Muslim taxi driver, as worshipful master. Later that week, the lodge also admitted a Hindu physician as an entered apprentice. When asked about these remarkable examples of the nature of Freemasonry, worshipful Brother Khan said, "Oi, this is going to make the stewards for tumult at dinner such a mishigas." Congratulations, Shalom Lodge. Well done. And that's the Masonic news. So mote it was.
Oh. Wow, now we got to start making fun of Jack instead of Larry.
Come on, I got a snort out of that one. Come on.
That was good.
Oh. So
I did get a fan letter. I think I shared it with you guys.
One.
What?
Just the one.
No, actually there was two. I couldn't find the second one. This is a big. This is hello, Larry. Big fan of the podcast. Maybe has taken over as my favorite now, and I look forward to every episode. I'm a Freemason in England under the United Grand Lodge of England in the province of Essex. Was just a message to say thanks to you and the guys. Keep up the good work. Sincerely and fraternally, Brother Jack Saunders, Boswell's Lodge number 7759 in the province of Essex. Thanks so much for getting a hold of us, Brother Jack. We appreciate that. And you know what? Record your voice on your cell phone. Email it to us, and we'll play it. Love it. Thank you.
absolutely.
Or send us a message on the Facebook page, or call us and leave a drop on
Leave
the
our
phone
voicemail.
number.
Yeah. So
Just let us know you're out there, please.
Oscar, is this where we get into what we have going on coming up?
Why are you asking him? But
I don't know.
Sure. This is the Oscar Allen show, whether you know it or not. We just ceded everything to him a while ago.
So, Oscar, do you have anything? What do you have Masonic coming up in the next, month? Or okay, you're okay. We should shorten that
Shorten
next
that
week.
to like 2 or 3 days.
I'm glad you caught up with that one because that's any given day it's crazy. So let's see. I have one of my friends is supposed to be receiving or hopefully being elected into the Grand Commandery of the of New York. We also have the Scottish Rite Supreme Council meetings coming up, both in the North and the South. Then I have a lecture I'm giving in September with the members of the Masonic Society in Kentucky, in Lexington, Kentucky. That would be the September 8th through the 10th. Subsequently, I also have other lectures in Ohio, in addition to the Michigan Lodge of Research in Detroit in September. And at the end of September, I will be going to England for a series of meetings there and going to the Grand Ball on the 30th.
So it's going to be a down period for you then.
It's going to be, it's relatively light.
Nice.
Yeah.
So your employers are relatively cool about all your travel? Or they don't know. They just think you're in the basement researching.
Yeah, he's doing research. That's
It's all research. No, they're cool. They some don't understand. Of course, I have staff that obviously don't understand Freemasonry. The younger generation call everything Illuminati. So I have to have to be very careful as to how I say things. But for the most part, I have flexibility and the ability to travel, especially if it's a weekend or hours or times when I can put it in conjunction with a work-related travel that I try to kill two birds with one stone. Or as some people say, I just never sleep.
Oscar, if any of our listeners wanted to watch a lecture or read a paper that you've written, where is a good resource so they can find a collection of your work?
Ooh, well, no, I don't have a website, nor do I have like a posted schedule of I get yelled at for that because brothers say, hey, we don't know where you're going. And I don't necessarily advertise where I'm going until after I get there.
Speaking of advertising, we could help you with that.
Yeah.
we need a new mixer.
A lot of Masons all at once.
Do you have any 8x10 autographs that we can sell on our website?
I'm sure you would not be able to sell a single autograph for Oscar Alleyne. I'm not.
www.
Small potatoes in comparison to some of the other guys out there.
I think MasonicLite.com/Oscar Alleyne has a nice ring to it.
We'll make it happen.
We have a spin-off show. Is that what we just got?
The Oscar store.
It's like the Cleveland show, but we hope it's going to work better.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, God. I almost did the zinga.
Yes! All right, you got it. There you go.
Oscar for the win.
Jason.
You guys told me you were coming for me. I told you.
Jason.
No, but there are a couple of my lectures that may be available on YouTube and things like that, and some of my papers that are, if I make available or they're available online or in some of the journals. So, but I don't have like, oh, go here and you see everything, Oscar. But I am working on a project that I'm hoping will be helpful.
Your lecture on companion, the French companions, is on YouTube through the Pennsylvania Academy of Knowledge. It is available on YouTube.
Yep, I watched it.
Yes, because you weren't there.
I know, I wasn't. I couldn't be there.
Jason, you have anything going on?
Well, I'm working on the Oscar Alleyne bobblehead as we speak. And aside from that, I've got, we go back in session next month. So we're just getting ready for that, getting everything ready for September. There's a barbecue stag night for
Grotto.
And for Tall Cedars. So Tall Cedars. And there's a get-together Jack's house as well.
on Sunday, yeah.
And then there's the 22nd, there's the Stag Night Barbecue. And aside from that, that's about it. So
we do have crib notes, which I'm going to give you the card for.
We might have to wait.
Yeah,
next. Yeah.
Well, we can do it next.
Larry, what do you have besides breakfast?
The breakfast, we have Tall Cedars picnic coming up.
Jeez.
We have the Stag Night.
Okay.
That's a biggie.
Jack, you have anything going on?
Well, having a cookout for Grotto at my house.
Oh, yeah, I forgot
Sunday.
about that. Yes.
By the time any of the listeners hear this, it will already be over. So, it was awesome. And then
You can wear the smallest hat you can find.
Yes. We're getting fez yarmulkes is what we're doing. They're just little tiny low-rise fezzes. That's what we're doing. And we're just about 3/4 done in the basement. About to start hanging drywall, and so that's exciting. It's just there today. It's going to be awesome.
And Shameless Lodge in the Woods.
Basement of his lodge, you meant.
Shameless Lodge in the Woods plug. Okay, Lodge in the Woods for anybody that would like to come. Oscar, just so you know, and you're welcome, by the way. You would be my guest. It's a lodge meeting at a Boy Scout camp in a large outdoor amphitheater. There's a covered roof in case it rains. We get between 200 and 350 people out for a steak dinner and a lodge meeting, and the Grand Master and the Grand Line come and give out lots of awards, and it's just a general good time. It's a good opportunity for new Masons to come out and take part in something that's a little bit unusual, and we can always use an extra hand. Tickets are available online. If you go to eventbrite.com and just search for 2017 Lodge in the Woods, that should get you there.
All right, and what do I have? I have Royal Order of Scotland, Tall Cedars, Grotto. Then I come back, and that's it. Council, I'm an officer in Council, an officer in Tall Cedars, so I'm busy.
Bam.
Okie dokie, Larry.
Time to go home.
It's time to go home. Take us out of here.
All right. Banjo music,
Cue
please.
the chickens.
Special thanks to Monarch Studios and to Mrs. Monarch for tolerating us for as long as she has. I love you, Steph. Our producer and co-host, Jason Lewis, who takes the show to new heights every time. Jack Harley, our news director. R.C. McCorvey, brother on the street. We need something from you, R.C.
We need a sign of life.
We need a sign of life here. Yeah, exactly. Brother Seth Anthony for his insight into fraternities that we had no ideas existed. Our audience response advisor, Lukewarm. And our grammar consultant, I am Shirley Wright. Our foreign news correspondent, by the way, Irma Blather, I heard from her the other day.
Did you?
She called, left a message on my phone, and I've been trying to get back to her. So I hope to have her on the show here shortly. And recognition, of course, to the law firm that keeps us out of trouble and out of jail. Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. This is Larry Maris.
Jason Lewis.
Jack Harley with special thanks to our guest, Oscar.
And Pete Ruggieri. Thank you, Oscar.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Oscar. You could say goodnight, Oscar.
Good night, brothers, and thank you all for indulging my hanging out with you for the full hour.
We loved it.
A lot of fun.
Take care, buddy.
Awesome, Oscar. We stopped recording, but who knows? Oh, they're going to clap now. All right.
That clap was so, I would say, just random.
That's our charm.
We're professionals, Oscar.
And as you know, when you listen to the show, it's not going to sound anything like what we just went through. That's to the magic that Jason does on the show.
Of course. I believe you now.
All right, sir. Take care. Have a good one.
Thanks so much for indulging us.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
No, I think we're good.
It was awesome. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, great. Sounded good.
Enjoy your evening.
Great. Thank you,
Thank
brother.
you, Oscar.
Farewell.
Bye-bye.
I'll see you this weekend.
Oh, so I finally found the camera.
That's one click away.
Well, it was like a window behind the other windows.
all right. When you shut it
Is he off for sure?
I don't see him. So yeah, don't talk about him because that'd be mean. But yeah, I think
So